the Nationals have just wrapped up that emergency meeting, which was their third emergency meeting in 24 hours. Now, we're not exactly sure what has been discussed. I'll make some more calls when I get off air with you, but we understand that they now will go into a meeting with the Premier, Deputy Premier, John Barilaro, we understand, will take try to talk to Gladys Berejiklian exactly what his proposal will be. I think that they discussed options and they want to negotiate. That's what we understand at this stage.
Yeah. So what is it for people outside New South Wales? Explain for us what this is all over.
This is the Nationals trying to agitate against the Liberals to change a koala protection policy. Now, the Nationals have concerns that this new koala protection policy will limit land use on farms because it classifies too many trees, they say, as koala habitat. So that will limit building on farms, it'll limit agricultural work, they say. They also say that it limits an ability of a farmer to sell their land and get it rezoned for development. And they say that this is unfair for regional people. Now, on the other side, it's Liberal Minister Rob Stokes, who's the planning minister, who has carriage of this policy. He says that this is about protecting koalas, that it doesn't limit farm work to the extent of, building a windmill or building a fence. But yes, it does mean that they have to look at the trees on a property before they sell it off and develop it for a bed and breakfast, say. So they have come to blows. This has been a policy that's been negotiated for 6 months behind closed doors. But about a week ago, they hit a roadblock and then the Nationals started going public, and it's erupted in a very public brawl that escalated to yesterday, saying that the Nats came together and John Barilaro with his ministers, Nationals minister, announced that they would stop supporting government legislation, that they would not sit in party room meetings, but they wanted to stay ministers and sit in cabinet meetings, even though they weren't going to vote for the government legislation. And the Premier yesterday afternoon stared them down, said to the Deputy Premier, this is unacceptable. You have till 9 o'clock this morning to decide whether you're in or you're out.
And so why is this particular policy worth dying in a ditch over for the Nationals?
It's a really good question, Joe. I think it has a lot of people scratching their head, but this does come back to that fight that we have seen erupt within the coalition time and time again over the past years. It happened under the previous Premier, Mike Baird. It's about this city versus country, and it's played out over local council amalgamations, it's played out over greyhounds, and now it's playing out over koalas. Now, with local council amalgamations and greyhounds, the Nationals were very, very damaged with votes, and they lost some seats in by-elections over their stance, and they felt that they didn't stick up for their community enough. Now, the Nationals say that they didn't want to make the same mistake again for koala policy. They say that farmers are very upset about this policy and they wanted to take a stand on it.
And does this also come from a degree of concern about the ongoing incursion of parties like the Shooter and Fishers Party into National Party heartland?
Yes, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers have been quite a threat to the Nationals Party. They, in fact, have 3 seats in the lower house that they have taken from the Nationals. So the Nationals need to be seen for sticking up to regional and rural. John Barilaro, when he took the reins as leader of the Nationals, he promised to fight for the Nationals, and that has been what he has tried to do before. He's been all talk. He's made lots of threats to almost split the coalition before, to stand up for regional people and his constituents, to look tough that he's supporting them and to stand up. And he has flexed his political muscle time and time again, but this time perhaps he has gone too far. And perhaps the timing is off, seeing we're in the middle of a health crisis and an economic crisis, and Gladys Berejiklian has decided not to give in to him. But look, they're about to enter into a new round of negotiations, and we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, but the indications overnight are that John Barilaro is not intending to bring down the government over this.
Yes, he gave a hint that he might walk back slightly, which is perhaps what he will say in his meeting with Gladys Berejiklian this morning. He did say that the Nationals were not prepared to give up their ministries, that really doesn't serve their regional communities well at all, not to have regional MPs in cabinet. So they're not prepared to give up their ministries, which means that he will have to give concessions somehow, and how then they put this coalition back together is going to take a lot of work. And what that means for John Barilaro's leadership, he has led them to this point. He's kept pushing, he kept upping the ante, and I believe that a lot of Liberals will not go back with the Nationals. They won't partner back with John Barilaro at the helm.
Yeah. OK, Ash, before we leave you, I might just give you an opportunity to look at your phone or whatever you have to do to see if there's any late information on what's happened. Because, and just while Ash is doing that, I'll just mention, so there's been this party room meeting over the last hour or so of the Nationals. I think there are about 13 Nationals MPs there, where the Nationals were going to decide what their next move was going to be, because Gladys Berejiklian had given them this ultimatum that they must declare their loyalty or hit the road. And so we were waiting for the results out of this meeting, the party room meeting, and then to see what was going to happen with this meeting with Gladys Berejiklian. So just before we leave Ash Raper for the moment, have there been any developments over the last several minutes or so to indicate what's happened in that party room meeting?
No, it just seems that they have put together what they want, that the Nationals now have a new proposal to go to Gladys Berejiklian, which revolves around keeping their ministries, but they want some concessions. So this is now going to be in negotiations. But, Gladys Berejiklian made it very clear yesterday she didn't want to negotiate, so we'll have to see what happens.
OK, so we've been keeping across New South Wales politics this morning because there was an ultimatum set by the New South Wales Premier yesterday to the junior coalition partner, the Nationals, that they had to declare their loyalty to the coalition or hit the road. And this was all over concerns about koala policy. The Nationals had said farmers are feeling like they're being strangled by regulation, and the government had this new policy to protect koalas. It increased the number of trees that had to be taken into account before land clearing would be allowed. And so there was this National Party meeting of the National Party MPs from 8 till 9 this morning. And then the Nationals leader, John Barilaro, was in this meeting with the New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, over the last half hour or so. So at stake was the coalition government in New South Wales. Political reporter Ash Raper joins us now. Ash, what's happened?
Well, we've just heard that the Deputy Premier has walked out of his meeting with the Premier, and basically he has walked away from his threat to effectively have National MPs sit on the crossbench. The Premier, from him, asked him to guarantee that the Nationals will stay in the coalition, and we understand that the Deputy Premier agreed to that. She also said that she wanted an agreement that National MPs will support government legislation, and we understand that John Barilaro agreed to that too. So this is a big turn of events that John Barilaro has really stepped back here. Now, there's still the issue over the koala policy, and John Barilaro wanted a special meeting to discuss that. Gladys Berejiklian said, we will discuss it at some point, but at some point when I say. So Gladys Berejiklian has stared down the Deputy Premier, John Barilaro, here, and she seems to have won.
So, but what's the damage done?
Well, this leaves a big question mark over the leadership of John Barilaro as the Nationals. Now, privately, Liberals are saying, well, this really leaves his leadership in tatters. Now, a lot of Liberal MPs would like that, but, the party has united behind John Barilaro over this issue. They came almost as one to this decision. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens with his leadership now. We do understand that yesterday he did offer his resignation, but his party said no to that. But what will happen now, because he has pushed this and he's pushed this and he's upped the ante, and he has come off second best this morning.
And Ash, what does this reflect about the leadership of Gladys Berejiklian? What has been her leadership style through the several years that she's been in the top post, and what does this particular incident show about her?
This shows a major strength of leadership in Gladys Berejiklian, which we haven't seen so often. Now, John Barilaro has a style where he's bluster and all talk and makes threats all the time about splitting the coalition. And Gladys Berejiklian's approach to him in the past has been to be conciliatory, to work with them, to work with the coalition partner. And we've seen her on other issues, not just with the Nationals, but with her own MPs, to try and really work with them. She's a leader who wants to bring her cabinet and her party and her coalition with her. But on this, she took a stand, and perhaps she has been emboldened by, we're in the middle of a health crisis and an economic crisis, and New South Wales so far has been quite a success story out of this pandemic. And she stared John Barilaro down on this point, and she has won. She called his bluff almost for the first time here, and John Barilaro has really rolled over.
Okay, so crisis averted for the moment, but some damage done. Will obviously be across this through the day. Are you hearing that any of them are going to be stepping up in the next few hours?
At this stage, we do understand that the Nationals will, whether it's a statement or whether they come out and talk, we are hearing that they will put something out shortly. From the Premier's office, we will expect something soon too.
Yep. Okay, Ash Raper keeping us across developments there in New South Wales politics. And ABC election analyst Anthony Green joins us now from Sydney. Anthony, g'day. So what do you make of all that?
It was the wrong issue at the wrong time and the wrong tactic. Just a cack-handed attempt to exert some authority by the National Party. Yes, they've got the numbers in the Parliament to make life tough for the government, but only by effectively making the government impossible to work. Gladys Berejiklian has always had difficulty asserting authority within the Liberal Party. It's a strange factional beast. But when the Nationals stood up and said, we're going to bring down the government, she had no difficulty getting unity in the Liberal Party to stand up to the tactic. At this timing of the coronavirus on an issue like koalas, and to use the nuclear option of bringing down, effectively bringing down a government, it's just it's very poorly handled by the National Party.